Welcome to Early Indicators. This is episode 5 in our January domain on geopolitical realignments. Today's theme is economic corridors as instruments of power, the new geography of influence. In this episode, we examine signals that are structural, not events, early, not reactive, underreported, not mainstream, and directional, not episodic. These signals reveal how infrastructure corridors are quietly reshaping global leverage. Historical context. How we reached this moment. For much of the 20th century, global influence flowed through maritime routes, energy pipelines, and industrial hubs controlled by a handful of major powers. The Cold War reinforced this geography, with strategic chokepoints and military alliances defining the map of global commerce. But over the last 40 to 50 years, structural forces have been redrawing the economic landscape. Rapid urbanization, demographic expansion in the global south, the rise of manufacturing clusters outside traditional centers, and the digitization of logistics have created new incentives for nations to build connective infrastructure. The 1990s saw the first wave of regional corridors in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe. The 2000s brought large-scale investments in transcontinental rail, energy grids, and port modernization. The 2010s accelerated this trend as countries sought to bypass choke points, diversify trade routes, and reduce dependency on single-country supply chains. The current moment represents a deeper inflection. Economic corridors are no longer just development projects, they are geopolitical instruments. They reshape systems of trade, energy, and mobility. They alter long-term trajectories by shifting where goods move, where capital flows, and where influence accumulates. They reveal fragility in over-centralized routes and resilience in diversified networks. This theme fits the domain because geopolitical realignments increasingly manifest through infrastructure rather than treaties. Corridors are becoming the physical architecture of a multipolar world. Current signals: what's emerging right now? Several early, underreported, directional signals show that economic corridors are becoming tools of strategic influence. The India, Middle East, Europe corridor is advancing through port upgrades, rail linkages, and energy interconnectors. While still early, it signals a long-term effort to create an alternative to traditional Eurasian routes. Africa is building transcontinental rail and road networks that connect landlocked regions to coastal hubs. These projects are reshaping intra-African trade and reducing reliance on external shipping lanes. Southeast Asia is expanding cross-border industrial corridors that integrate manufacturing, energy, and digital infrastructure. These corridors strengthen regional autonomy and reduce exposure to external supply chain shocks. Central Asian states are developing east-west and north-south corridors that bypass traditional transit choke points. These routes are early indicators of a more distributed Eurasian trade system. Middle Eastern energy corridors are being redesigned to support hydrogen, ammonia, and renewable exports, signaling a shift in the long-term trajectory of global energy flows. Digital corridors, fiber routes, data centers, and cloud infrastructure are emerging alongside physical corridors, creating layered systems of influence. These signals matter because they reshape the global economic system itself. They alter long-term trajectories by redistributing trade flows and investment patterns. They reveal fragility in legacy routes and resilience in diversified networks. Signal strength: accelerating. Case studies, where the shift is most visible. The India, Middle East, Europe corridor. Early construction and diplomatic coordination show how infrastructure is being used to create a new trans-regional trade spine that bypasses traditional Eurasian routes. East Africa's Lapset Corridor. Linking Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, this project illustrates how corridors can unlock inland markets and shift regional economic gravity. Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand Industrial Triangle, a fast-growing manufacturing corridor that integrates ports, special economic zones, and energy grids, strengthening Southeast Asia's production ecosystem. Central Asia's Middle Corridor, a rail plus port network connecting the Caspian Sea to Europe, offering an alternative to northern transit routes. Implications: why this matters. For nations, corridors reshape strategic geography, influence trade dependencies, and determine long-term economic resilience. For cities, they transform logistics hubs, industrial zones, and workforce patterns. For firms, they alter supply chain design, transportation costs, and market access. For communities, they affect job creation, mobility, and exposure to environmental or economic shocks. At the macro layer, corridors redistribute global influence by shifting where goods, energy, and data move. At the micro layer, specific ports, border towns, and industrial districts become new centers of gravity. This shift reveals fragility in single-route dependencies and resilience in diversified, multi-node networks. Future expectations/projections, where this is heading. Short term, 1 to 3 years. Expect more bilateral agreements, feasibility studies, and early-stage construction. Digital infrastructure will increasingly be embedded into physical corridors. Medium term, 3 to 10 years, major corridors will mature into integrated economic zones with shared regulations, energy systems, and logistics platforms. Regional blocs will use corridors to strengthen autonomy. Long term, 10+ years, the global map of influence will be defined by interconnected corridors rather than isolated hubs. Trade, energy, and data flows will follow new routes that reflect a multipolar world. Early indicators to watch: new port expansions, cross-border rail agreements, digital corridor announcements, and energy transition infrastructure. What to watch next: track how emerging corridors integrate renewable energy, digital connectivity, and industrial policy. These layers will determine which corridors become dominant. Episode summary. This episode explored how economic corridors are becoming instruments of geopolitical power. These signals, structural, early, underreported, and directional, show how the geography of influence is being rewritten through infrastructure rather than ideology. Thank you for listening to Early Indicators. Please like, subscribe, and share the podcast. This episode draws on publicly available information, including international think tank reports, academic research, public economic and demographic data, open-source intelligence, and non-copyrighted summaries. This episode is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not constitute political advice, financial guidance, or predictive certainty.